Well, John, it's an appropriate time to be talking to you given that the breeders have put this conference together, because it's been quite a challenge for breeders, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. There's uncertainty, the costs are high, people are concerned particularly about on costs and stallion fees, but we've got to be positive. We've got to do something to hold our breeding numbers so that we can put the racing product on the track, Greg.
You talked, obviously, to you at your level, at business level, when you sit down with your group of the breeders, and you decided that this was a smart way to go forward.
Yeah, we did, because today's about the information about the industry, and I've found a lot of breeders don't really understand what funds this, where the funding comes from and how the industry actually works. So that's why we got Edward along, we got the racing board along, our McGurran to talk about the realities of wagering and communications. It's just to try and give people confidence that there is some substance in the industry and it's worth staying in the industry.
What are some of the KPIs that the Standard breeders are looking at to increase not only the number of foals being born, but obviously the longevity of breeders in the game?
Yeah, increasing foals is going to be hard because of the cost, but what I'm greatly interested in is getting greater utilisation out of fillies and mares. We still only get 42% of them to the racetrack and 55% of colts, so there's a big upside in getting fillies and mares racing going. We want to see more racing of the horses that are out there. We currently race about 8.5 times a year per horse. We need to get that up to 9 and 10 if we're to maintain our share in the industry and give people rewards. Also, if they race, people are going to have an opportunity to sell to Australia, and I don't think that's something we should be scared of, because 50% of the horses that race in New Zealand are raced by their breeders, so that's another way for breeders to get a return. So there's nothing wrong with selling to Australia, and in fact we should make it a deliberate business policy.
This is a very positive step towards the future of the game. Where do you see it?
Oh, I'm positive. I think that there's signs out there that we've consolidated. I think we've just got to be quite smart and work together as an industry. I think we've got to cooperate with the thoroughbreds and the greyhounds to maintain horse racing and wagering generally as part of the New Zealand psyche and sport. That's possibly our biggest issue. But I think we've got a core. I'm not sure, I suppose I'd be worried if we got reduced further, but I think there's a good core there to maintain our presence. The magic is the current 135 million we receive through the racing board and maintaining that. That's the key.
The numbers attending the conference, that must also be a positive in terms of its inaugural running.
It is. We got 100 here, fee paying. It was a bit of a risk to put it on. We got a bit of sponsorship, but it's really good. We've got some industry leaders here, and I'm thrilled that they're here, because they can go back to their particular areas, Auckland and Southland, and spread the message.
Well, I guess it was an appropriate time for this conference to be called, so the Standard breeders should be applauded.
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile initiative, and it's a great way of communicating with the breeders and sharing information and getting their ideas.
What about HRNZ and the executive concerns over foal breeding numbers? This has to be a real worry for the industry.
I think it's a challenge to everyone within the industry in terms of not only our breeding numbers but also our racing numbers, and just trying to maximise our participation and confidence.
All right, given that 10 or 12 years ago, basically we bred double the foals, to be able to retain our market share against the other codes and other sports, etc., it's imperative that we have horse numbers, given that less than 50% actually get to the races.
Yeah, it is. Obviously the breeding numbers have dropped. That's not necessarily a bad thing, and what has quite obvious is the quality has improved, and the wastage factor between the horses that are bred to those that get to the races has increased. So the challenges for the future are trying to maintain the breeding numbers as best we can, get the horses that are bred, try and reduce that wastage factor even further, get them to the races, and also with our horse population have it racing more.